There are moments in life when the pressure feels louder than the promise, when the valley feels longer than your faith, and when you wonder if God is silent in the middle of your struggle. But today, I came to remind somebody that pressure is not punishment, it is positioning. When life presses you, heaven is not pushing you away, God is pulling you closer. Psalm 23 is not just a comforting poem, it is a declaration of divine strategy. It was written by a shepherd who understood danger, darkness, and uncertainty, yet he could still say, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." That means even when you feel surrounded, you are still supplied. Even when you feel shaken, you are still shepherded. Some of you watching this are walking through valleys you never planned for, emotional battles, silent fears, doors that closed without warning. But hear this, the valley is not your identity, it is only your passage. Because the same God who leads you beside still waters will also walk with you through shadowed places. So don't click away. Don't lose heart, lean in, because today we're uncovering the power of Psalm 23 and discovering how when life presses you, God pulls you closer than you ever imagined. There are seasons when life feels like a descent into unfamiliar terrain, when the path narrows and the light grows dim and every step forward feels heavier than the last. The valley is not always announced with warning signs. Sometimes it appears quietly through unexpected loss, unanswered prayers, or moments when strength seems to slip through your fingers. Yet the valley has never been designed to be a destination. It is movement, transition, and unfolding purpose disguised as pressure. When David spoke of walking through the valley of the shadow of death, he chose a word that implied motion. He did not describe settling, building, or remaining. He described walking, continuing, progressing even when surrounded by shadows. Many people misinterpret the valley as evidence of abandonment, but Scripture reveals it as evidence of guidance. A shepherd does not lead sheep into valleys to harm them, but to bring them toward greener pastures that lie beyond steep terrain. Valleys often hold streams, shelter from harsh winds, and hidden provision that cannot be found on the mountaintop. What feels like descent may actually be direction. When circumstances lower your altitude, they may be aligning your vision so you can see God more clearly without the distraction of pride or self-reliance. The valley exposes what the mountain can hide. On the mountain, applause can echo louder than faith, and success can masquerade as security. But in the valley, the noise fades, leaving only the sound of your own heartbeat and the whisper of God's presence. It is in this quiet intensity that faith matures from theory into dependence. You begin to discover that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep walking while fear tries to slow your steps. The shadows in the valley may appear large, but shadows only exist where light is present. Even when you cannot see the full path, the presence of God casts enough illumination to take the next step. The valley has a way of revealing identity. When comfort is stripped away, you begin to confront who you are beyond titles, roles, or expectations. Some enter the valley carrying labels placed on them by past failures or by the opinions of others, but the journey reshapes how they see themselves. Instead of defining yourself by the darkness around you, you begin to define yourself by the shepherd who walks beside you. The valley becomes a classroom where resilience is taught, where patience deepens, and where trust stops being conditional. Walking through difficult terrain also exposes the difference between speed and endurance. On mountaintops, movement can feel effortless, but valleys demand steady pacing. Every step becomes intentional. You learn that rushing through pain often prolongs it, while walking faithfully through it transforms it. The shepherd does not demand perfection from the sheep. He calls for trust. Even when the path curves unexpectedly, his guidance remains constant. The staff that corrects and the rod that protects symbolize care, not control. They remind you that even discipline can be an expression of love, guiding you away from unseen danger. Some valleys are internal rather than external. They exist within thoughts, emotions, and silent battles that others cannot see. The pressure of comparison, disappointment, or loneliness can create shadows that feel as real as any physical obstacle. Yet these internal valleys are often where spiritual growth accelerates. When external distractions fade, the soul becomes more aware of divine whispers. You begin to notice small evidences of grace that once went unnoticed, a moment of peace in the middle of chaos, an unexpected word of encouragement, a renewed sense of hope that arrives without explanation. The valley challenges assumptions about strength. Many believe strength is proven by standing alone, but true strength is revealed through dependence on God. The image of walking through the valley with a shepherd emphasizes relationship rather than isolation. It suggests that divine companionship transforms the meaning of hardship. Instead of asking why the valley exists, you begin to ask what it is shaping within you. Character forged in difficulty carries a depth that comfort cannot produce. Compassion grows deeper because you understand pain, and wisdom becomes more grounded because you have walked through uncertainty. Fear often amplifies itself in narrow places. The walls of the valley can echo doubts, making them sound louder than they truly are. Yet faith reframes the echo. Instead of hearing threats, you begin to recognize reminders of God's promises. The valley may limit your view of the horizon, but it sharpens your awareness of presence. When you cannot see far ahead, you learn to trust the one who sees beyond every bend in the path. This trust does not remove the challenge. It transforms how you walk through it. The rhythm of walking through a valley is different from standing still. Movement creates momentum, and momentum creates hope. Even small steps matter. Each act of faith, no matter how quiet, becomes a declaration that the valley does not define your future. You begin to realize that the valley is not a sign that your story is ending, but evidence that it is unfolding. The terrain may be uneven, but the direction remains purposeful. The shepherd's voice becomes clearer when you focus less on the shadows and more on his guidance. There is a paradox hidden within valleys. They can feel isolating, yet they often reveal deeper connection with God and with others. Shared struggles create bonds that superficial victories cannot replicate. When people walk through their own valleys, they begin to understand the language of empathy. They learn to listen more deeply, to pray more sincerely, and to encourage others with authenticity rather than empty words. The valley reshapes how you relate to community, turning casual relationships into meaningful support systems. Sometimes the valley brings confrontation with past wounds that were never fully healed. Memories surface, questions arise, and old fears attempt to reclaim space in your mind. Yet this confrontation can be part of restoration. The shepherd does not rush you through healing. He walks with you as layers are uncovered. What once felt like weakness becomes a doorway to freedom. The process may be uncomfortable, but it reveals that transformation often happens beneath the surface before it becomes visible outwardly. The environment of the valley also teaches discernment. Not every voice deserves attention, and not every thought deserves agreement. As you walk, you learn to distinguish between the noise of fear and the guidance of faith. Discernment grows when you choose to align your perspective with God's promises rather than with temporary circumstances. This alignment changes how you interpret challenges. Instead of seeing obstacles as barriers, you begin to see them as stepping stones toward deeper trust. Time behaves differently in the valley. Moments can feel stretched, and progress may seem slow, but spiritual growth often happens in gradual layers rather than sudden leaps. The shepherd's pace is intentional, allowing you to absorb lessons that might be missed if the journey were rushed. Patience becomes a companion rather than an enemy. Waiting no longer feels like stagnation, it becomes preparation. The valley trains your heart to remain steady even when external conditions fluctuate. The imagery of a shadow is significant because a shadow cannot harm you without substance behind it. Fear often magnifies possibilities that have no power to define your destiny. Walking through the valley teaches you to recognize the difference between perceived danger and actual threat. With each step, confidence grows, not because the valley changes, but because your awareness of God's presence becomes stronger than your awareness of fear. The shadow loses its authority when the shepherd's nearness becomes your focus. Many discover creativity and purpose in the valley. When familiar structures are removed, new perspectives emerge. Ideas that once felt distant begin to take shape because hardship refines clarity. The valley becomes a place where calling is sharpened, where gifts are refined through perseverance. What seemed like interruption may actually be redirection toward something more aligned with your purpose. The journey reshapes priorities, revealing what truly matters and what can be released. Gratitude also transforms within the valley. Instead of waiting for perfect circumstances, you begin to recognize blessings within imperfection. A small moment of peace becomes significant, a simple reminder of hope becomes powerful. Gratitude shifts your focus from what is missing to what is present, creating resilience that carries you forward. The shepherd's provision may appear differently than expected, but it remains consistent. Walking through the valley also reveals that faith is both personal and communal. While each person's journey is unique, the presence of God connects every story. Testimonies born in the valley become sources of encouragement for others who face similar paths. The courage you develop does not remain confined to your own experience, it extends outward, becoming a light for those who struggle to see their way forward. The valley teaches surrender in ways the mountain rarely can. Control begins to loosen its grip as you recognize that not every outcome can be managed by human effort alone. Surrender is not resignation. It is trust that God's guidance is wiser than personal understanding. This trust reshapes how you respond to uncertainty. Instead of resisting every challenge, you begin to walk with openness, allowing the shepherd to lead even when the path feels unfamiliar. Hope evolves in the valley. It becomes less about immediate change and more about enduring presence. The assurance that you are not alone carries weight greater than the promise of instant relief. This kind of hope anchors you, allowing you to stand firm even when emotions fluctuate. The valley may test your expectations, but it also deepens your capacity to believe beyond what you can currently see. The journey through the valley is rarely linear. There are moments of progress followed by moments of hesitation, days when faith feels strong and others when questions arise. Yet the shepherd remains consistent through every shift. The path may curve, but his guidance does not waver. With each step, you begin to understand that transformation is happening even when it feels invisible. Strength is forming quietly. Resilience is taking root, and faith is becoming less dependent on circumstance and more anchored in relationship. Pressure has a way of stripping away illusions. It reveals the difference between what feels secure and what truly sustains the soul. In comfortable seasons, people often rely on routines, achievements, or familiar surroundings to define their sense of stability. Yet when pressure increases, those external anchors can begin to shake, exposing a deeper need for something unchanging. Hard seasons do not arrive randomly. They often uncover the proximity of God in ways that ordinary moments cannot reveal. When distractions fade and control loosens its grip, the awareness of divine presence becomes more tangible, more personal, and more transformative. Many assume that pressure signals distance from God, as though difficulty is proof of abandonment. Yet throughout Scripture, moments of greatest pressure often coincide with moments of profound encounter. When the weight of life intensifies, it narrows attention and forces a reorientation of focus. Instead of scattering energy across countless concerns, the heart begins to seek what is essential. In that search, God's nearness becomes clearer. The noise that once filled the mind loses its authority, replaced by a quieter but stronger awareness that you are not walking alone. Pressure reveals proximity because it dismantles self-reliance. In seasons of ease, it is possible to attribute success to personal effort, intelligence, or planning. But when challenges arise that exceed human capacity, the need for divine help becomes undeniable. This realization does not diminish strength, it refines it. Dependence on God is not weakness, but alignment with a source that does not fail. As pressure increases, prayers often become more honest, less rehearsed, and more authentic. Words no longer aim to impress. They express genuine longing for guidance and peace. The nearness of God in hard seasons is often subtle rather than dramatic. It may appear as unexpected calm in the middle of chaos, or as clarity that emerges when confusion once dominated. Some experience it as a renewed sense of hope that arrives without logical explanation. Others recognize it through the presence of supportive people who speak encouragement at precisely the right moment. These small yet powerful signs remind you that pressure does not isolate you from God. It often draws you into deeper awareness of His involvement in your life. Pressure also reshapes perception. What once seemed overwhelming begins to appear manageable when viewed through the lens of faith. This shift does not deny the reality of hardship, it reframes it. Instead of seeing obstacles as evidence of defeat, you begin to interpret them as opportunities for growth and transformation. The closer you walk with God, the more you recognize that every challenge carries potential to reveal new dimensions of strength. The shepherd does not promise a path without pressure, but he promises presence within it. Hard seasons often create space for introspection. When routines are disrupted, you are invited to examine your beliefs, priorities, and expectations. This process can feel uncomfortable because it exposes areas of vulnerability, yet it also opens the door for healing. God's proximity becomes evident as He meets you within those vulnerable places, offering reassurance rather than condemnation. The pressure that once felt like an enemy begins to reveal itself as a catalyst for deeper connection. In moments of pressure, time can feel compressed. Decisions seem urgent, emotions intensify, and the future may appear uncertain. Yet within this intensity lies an invitation to slow down internally, even when external circumstances demand action. Drawing near to God does not always remove the pressure, but it transforms how you carry it. Instead of feeling crushed by expectations, you begin to experience a sense of partnership, as though the burden is shared rather than borne alone. The language of proximity is relational rather than transactional. God's nearness is not earned through perfection or performance. It is experienced through openness and trust. Pressure reveals how deeply this relationship is rooted. When circumstances challenge your confidence, you may discover that your faith is stronger than you realized. Even moments of doubt can become pathways toward deeper understanding because they prompt honest dialogue with God. Questions do not push Him away, they invite deeper engagement. Hard seasons often refine listening. When life becomes difficult, distractions lose their appeal, making room for a quieter attentiveness to God's voice. This voice may come through Scripture, through a sense of inner peace, or through the wisdom of others. As you learn to recognize it, you begin to notice patterns of guidance that were previously overlooked. The more you lean into this guidance, the more evident God's proximity becomes, transforming pressure from a source of fear into an invitation to deeper communion. Pressure can also expose hidden resilience. Many people underestimate their capacity to endure until circumstances demand it. In these moments, God's nearness becomes the source of courage that sustains each step forward. Strength grows not through the absence of struggle, but through the presence of grace within it. You begin to understand that resilience is not about suppressing emotion, but about allowing God's presence to steady your heart amid uncertainty. One of the paradoxes of pressure is that it can reveal beauty within brokenness. When expectations crumble, new perspectives emerge. Creativity often flourishes in difficult seasons because necessity pushes you beyond familiar patterns. God's proximity becomes evident in the way new ideas, renewed purpose, or unexpected opportunities arise from what once seemed like loss. The pressure that threatened to overwhelm becomes the very environment where transformation takes root. Community also takes on new significance during hard seasons. God often draws near through the presence of others who reflect His compassion and understanding. Encouragement, shared prayer, and genuine empathy become tangible expressions of divine care. Pressure teaches you to recognize these moments not as coincidences, but as reminders that God works through relationships to bring comfort and strength. The isolation that pressure attempts to create is countered by the connection that God provides. Fear frequently accompanies pressure, whispering narratives of inadequacy or failure. Yet God's proximity introduces a different narrative, one grounded in identity rather than circumstance. You begin to see yourself not as defined by struggle, but as held within a relationship that transcends it. This shift in identity reshapes how you respond to challenges. Instead of retreating, you learn to face difficulties with confidence, rooted in faith rather than in temporary success. Hard seasons often bring hidden lessons about surrender. Control, which once felt essential, begins to loosen as you recognize its limitations. Surrender does not mean giving up, it means trusting that God's perspective is broader than your own. In this posture, pressure becomes less about resisting what you cannot change and more about embracing what God is shaping within you. Each moment of surrender draws you closer to His presence, creating a rhythm of trust that steadies your heart. The proximity of God is sometimes revealed through unexpected peace. This peace does not depend on external resolution. It exists alongside unresolved questions. It allows you to breathe deeply even when circumstances remain uncertain. Such peace becomes a testimony that God's presence is not limited by conditions. It reminds you that strength can coexist with vulnerability, and hope can persist even in the absence of clear answers. Pressure also invites gratitude to evolve. Instead of waiting for ideal circumstances, you begin to notice small evidences of grace woven into daily life. A moment of laughter, a quiet prayer, or a simple reminder of God's faithfulness becomes significant. Gratitude shifts focus away from what feels overwhelming and toward what remains constant. This shift does not deny hardship. It reframes it within a larger story of divine faithfulness. As hard seasons continue, endurance develops quietly. Each step forward becomes an act of trust, and each moment of perseverance reveals deeper layers of faith. God's proximity is not always accompanied by dramatic signs. Sometimes it is experienced through the steady assurance that you are being guided even when you cannot see the full path. This assurance transforms pressure from a source of anxiety into a journey of growth. The process of walking through pressure often reshapes expectations about success and fulfillment. What once seemed essential may lose its urgency, while relationships, purpose, and spiritual depth gain new importance. God's nearness helps you reevaluate what truly matters, aligning your heart with values that endure beyond temporary achievement. This realignment creates a foundation that remains stable even when circumstances fluctuate. Hard seasons also deepen empathy. Experiencing pressure allows you to understand the struggles of others with greater compassion. The comfort you receive from God becomes a source of encouragement you can extend to those around you. In this way, proximity to God expands beyond personal experience, influencing how you engage with the world. Your story becomes a reflection of grace, demonstrating that pressure does not have the final word. The journey through pressure is rarely predictable. There are moments of clarity followed by moments of uncertainty, times when faith feels strong and others when it feels fragile. Yet God's proximity remains constant through every shift. Even when emotions fluctuate, His presence provides stability. This consistency becomes the anchor that holds you steady, reminding you that hard seasons are not evidence of distance, but invitations into deeper relationship. Pressure reveals that faith is not merely an idea, but a lived experience. It moves beyond words into action, shaping how you respond to challenges and how you view yourself. Each moment of reliance on God strengthens the awareness that you are supported by something greater than circumstance. The closer you walk with Him, the more you recognize that pressure is not the end of the story, but part of a process that draws you nearer, shaping resilience, deepening trust, and revealing the transformative power of divine presence